let's start off talking about agents. Contract advisors kind of fancy. They have to have at least a secondary degree. Everyone thinks, oh, well, if you're an agent, you must be an attorney. That's not true. You just have to have a secondary degree. There's also a way that you can apply and perhaps get approval even without that secondary degree if you can prove that you've been negotiating contracts, but that's a lot harder to do, and it's a lot more rare. About 800 certified, but only about half of them actually have clients. That's actually a little bit high. It's probably more like 40% actually have clients. Of the ones that do have clients, only about a third have more than one. A lot of people are just hanging on by their fingernails, and we'll talk a little bit more about the industry here in a minute and why it's so hard to crack in and why it's so hard to stay on top once you get in. If you don't negotiate at least one contract within 3 years, and that it can be as little as an undrafted free agent contract, which is when guys come in after the draft and they aren't drafted, but you just get a guy on a roster, that counts. But if you don't do that at least every 3 years, then you've got to start all over, you've got to take the exam, you've got to pay the entrance fee, you've got to do all those things. So they're constantly trying to flush out guys that aren't really viable in the game anymore. And that's another one of the things that kind of makes being an agent hard, because there's no one really to teach you how to do it. By the time you figured it out, they want to push you out if you don't have some more contract. All right. So if you want to become an agent, you got to have a little bit of money just to become one. $2,500 is a registration fee. You have to register in January. You don't get that money back. So if you decided, oh man, you know what, I didn't know I had a vacation scheduled for when the exam was or whatever, they're like, thanks for $2,500. And they're pretty bad. And they're pretty bad about being kind of unforgiving about it. They will do a background check on you. They will verify everything, your degrees, what have you, and they take their sweet time. Lots of times you'll register in January, you won't actually find out that you're verified, registered, ready to roll for the exam until sometime in May or June. I've even seen it in July, especially if you're trying to go without the secondary degree. It takes place in Washington, D.C. at the Four Seasons, big fancy hotel, another price that you have to pay. Results of the test are available. I put August, it's usually early September, kind of late August, and then you've got to pay another $2,500 to get insurance and the remainder of your registration, what have you. And that's before you've paid any money to register in the state or do anything at all like that. So being an agent's a pricey proposition before you even talk to your first player.
We all just out of curiosity, how many, do you know the breakdown? How many women are agents? Is that 800? Do you know?
It's a rising number.
Is it?
But I would, well, it's definitely less than 100. I would say it's definitely less than 50. I would say 30.
About 30?
It may be a little higher, but not much higher.
Okay, just curious.
The ones that are really viable agents, I'd say there's about 12. Not a whole lot.
Okay.
It's a tough game to crack into if you're one. Okay, so after year one, the dues changed a bit. We talked about registration. Texas happens to be one of the toughest places to register. You have to have, I think, a $100,000 surety bond. That costs $1,000. That's on the high end. That's before you register. So it's about $1,500 just before you can talk to anyone. And the thing about Texas is, if you played here, and let's say anywhere in the state, and you call an agent and say, hey, would you please sign me? I'm just looking for someone to sign me. And they do you a favor and they say, yeah, I'll sign you, but they're not registered in the state, they will get fined later on. Really tough the way the state of Texas does it. They don't really understand the business. That's really neither here nor there. Okay, so you've paid the money to become an agent. Now you're certified. Now you want to sign a player. You want to sign a player who's viable and who has a chance to at least make a 90-man roster, and who knows, maybe get drafted late. How much are you going to spend? Start off with spending anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 just to train. And that's $25,000 on the high end. If you're a new agent, you're probably not going to be spending that much. But you're going to be spending something because every player has come to believe they need to be trained and ready for their pro day, which I can understand. But they don't want to train at their own school. They want to go off somewhere and train at a boutique facility, preferably in the Sun Belt, where they can go and hang out and do something when they're not actually working their 40 or their 5-10-5. So it gets a little pricey there. If you're talking about a guy that's going to go in the first 4 rounds, you're spending at least $5,000 a month to them just for spending money January, February, March, April. That gets a little pricey. That's $20,000 right there too. Then your signing bonus. Used to 10 years ago, an agent would say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a line of credit for $10,000. And that's how much money you have to spend before the draft. Nobody wants a line of credit because you've got to pay that back. So everyone wants a signing bonus now. How much is a signing bonus? If you're first half of the first round, it's probably about $100,000. If you're anywhere later than that, it could be anywhere. I've seen third rounders, fourth rounders, they get $50,000 signing bonuses. That's crazy money, guys. Now, I didn't put in here the breakdown of how you get paid as you come back, but all this stuff is checks you just have to write, and if the guy doesn't make it for whatever reason, sorry. You're leveraged, man. Your money's already out there. So it's a tough business. Marketing guarantees, that's another thing where kind of a way that you got your money back, but players don't really want that because they have to pay that back. And right now, the maximum fee you can bill is 3%. Right now, the default thing called an SRA, the Standard Representation Agreement, is 1.5%. So you've got to talk me into taking 3%. That's, again, very tricky stuff. All right, let's talk about a year in the life of an agent. Start off in the spring, you identify your prospects, who you're going to recruit, who you're going to talk to. Do they live close to you? Do you have a relationship with them? Do you know their coach? That's how most people kind of get the ball rolling and get started. You build your recruiting list, all that, contact them. Sometimes you go through social media. A lot of schools are very hardcore about monitoring players' social media. So you got to be really careful about that. I've seen agents get fined because they weren't registered with the school. They did nothing more than send a friend request on Facebook and they got gigged. So it's tough, treacherous stuff. Of course, in the spring, you're also kind of working on the guys that hopefully are getting ready for the draft and what have you from previous classes. Summer, you have something called an agent day. Every school in Texas has to have one. I think every FBS school anyway. It's very simply, hey, we're gonna send letters to all of our agents that are registered with the school. They're gonna say, okay, yeah, I'll be there. Then you go to the players and say, hey, who do you want to meet with? These are the guys that said they'll be here. The player chooses who he wants to talk to, and then they set up meetings on one day. Everyone comes in, some get an hour, some get 15 minutes, it kind of varies. There's not really any regulation on that per se with the state. It's just a way to kind of meet under school auspices. That's the good news. The bad news is typically a school will say, okay, you've met, I don't want you to call them again until the year's over. And that's really hard to do because it's hard to develop a relationship with someone if you only met them one time in the summer and then you can't talk to them again until after they're done playing. So it's kind of a tricky kind of give and take here. And a lot of agents choose not to participate in agent days because they don't want to submit to that. They want to be able to talk to a kid whenever. It's legal to do, but it's not going to make the schools happy, and they might kind of get in the way. Fall recruiting continues. Some families begin meeting with agents, even financial advisors. Some of the dads and moms really get off on this stuff. I mean, they love being wooed and recruited. They feel like they're the ones being recruited more so even than the players sometimes. The parents really get into it. They love kind of being courted and what have you. Get into November, the visits increase. They start cut. You might get cut if you're an agent, even though you've invested 6-7 months talking to a kid, you really felt like you know him, you want to represent him. They might say, hey man, sorry, we're going to go with this bigger firm, or we got finalists and you're not one of them, so get lost. Another kind of difficult part of the game. We start doing our invites for the College Ground Showcase in October and November. December is also a busy time, but we really start putting our words out in November. So that's when a lot of all-star games, you'll start seeing stuff on social media about, hey, I got invited to the Senior Bowl, I got invited to the NFLPA game, whatever. So you'll see a lot of that. And then December is the big time. Agents are going to spend almost all December on the road. They're either meeting with families, meeting with a kid personally, attending bowl games, or even sometimes going to the school to kind of set things up. They're also going and visiting with training facilities. We'll talk more about that there. All right, so January. That's when the big-time players, usually playing in big-time bowl games, are starting to sign their standard representation agreements. Combine prep begins with training facilities. They're all over the country, but most of the bigger ones are in Florida, some in Texas, mostly California, some in Atlanta. Players want to train, especially the elite players, the premium ones, want to train somewhere in the Sun Belt where it's warm, where they can hang out, where it's fun, more of a party city. Miami's a very popular one. There's several big-time ones down there. That's typically where players are training these days. The big ones. The lesser ones are training at school, or they're training at places kind of in the Rust Belt, Pittsburgh area, Cleveland. There are a couple in the Midwest, but for the most part, that's where most of the training is taking place. You'll also see a lot of players starting to call agents. You go to the NFLPA website, every certified agent is listed there. All their contact information is there. Usually the phone number that's listed is their cell phone number. So you can call a guy as many times as you want and beg him to sign you. A lot of players do that. Their email addresses are also listed. So they're an open book. They're easy to reach, easy to find, And lots of agents probably get called 4 or 5 times a day in January from players that haven't been recruited. February, as you all know, the combine takes place at the end of the month. The invitation list comes out. Usually it's official around the first week of February. Training's taking place, what have you. March is for pro days. Some junior days, which is basically the pro day before the senior season. Some schools do that, some schools don't. And then April is when the draft takes place. All right, so May is when rookie mini camps happen. A lot of undrafted undrafted players are trying to sign deals post-draft. A lot of players are firing their agent because they didn't get drafted and they thought they were. Some are going to training to tryouts with CFL and even the Arena League, although that's kind of failing. And next year they'll be looking at the XFL as well. And then in June we've got agents with unsigned clients kind of picking up the pieces. Relationships are ending, they're starting, and then it all kind of starts back over. All right, any questions right now? Please just chime in if you do. Please just stop me. All right, so NFLPA agents' lifespan. Oops. All right. Okay, so this summer we'll have about 100 to 150 agents that sit for the exam. About 5 years ago, it was about a 75% pass rate. Now it's about a 45% pass rate. The NFLPA doesn't want agents to pass the exam. They really don't want people, they really only want about 100 agents. It's mushroomed a lot. When I started ITL in 02, what's the name of the agent movie? Tom Cruise.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. Okay, everybody here knows that movie. Jerry Maguire was on TBS 3 times a day. Okay, everybody had seen Jerry Maguire. Everyone wanted to be Jerry Maguire. Everyone showed me the money and all that kind of stuff. It was hot. And so when I started ITL in 02, I thought, hey, I'm gonna service all these people. There were 1,500 agents registered. I thought, gosh, if I just throw them some information, I'm sure they'll want to sign up and do all this stuff and everything's gonna be great. Within a couple years, they came in, the big agency said, we don't want some of these small agents around. So they put in the 3-year rule saying, if you don't have someone on a roster in 3 years, you're out. So that cut the list from about 1,500 to about 800. But still the exam was really easy. So about 5 years ago, they made the exam where it was just kind of an easy, everybody passed kind of thing. So now it's really tough, 45% pass rate. A lot of people go in there thinking it's gonna be easy and they find out, man, I really wish I would have taken this more seriously. So it's just another way that the NFLPA is trying to institute changes to make it harder to be an agent. So while it's still popular, it's just there's a lot higher bar to actually get in. 20% attrition rate. After the first year, only about a third make it the full 3 years, either by choice or because they're getting, for whatever reason, they're getting bumped out. And then only about 50% actually get a climb on a 90-man roster after the draft in their first year. Very rare. The ones that actually get a player on 53, even more rare. And only about a fourth to a tenth ever gets to negotiate a second deal, which is where the real money is. All right, so as you can imagine, this is an industry that's a little bit tricky. There's significant challenges that are taking place. There are 2 tiers of prospects. These are the guys that go 1st through 4th round, and then pretty much everyone else. Because if you're rated as a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder, really what you are is a highly touted, a glorified undrafted free agent. So you could get drafted, you might not get drafted. A lot of guys go in thinking, well, I'm gonna go 5th round at the latest. Really what you're saying is, I'm probably getting drafted, but the good news is one way or another I'll wind up on a roster, but who knows where that's gonna be. Just so much uncertainty when it comes to the last 3 rounds of the draft. As far as player inducements, all the things we talked about that cost money, the bigger firms can write the bigger checks, obviously. The smaller firms can't, and they can't sustain the liability if they pay someone a lot of money and then he doesn't make a roster. So the middle class agencies are vanishing. You're getting the smaller guys that are coming in that might have a lot of money or at least a lot of patience and a lot of passion. They're kind of trying to make it happen. Some of them will move up, and most of them fail out. The big firms are just soaking up all the players that have any chance of playing in the league. So the middle class, the agents that were there before all the money really came into the game are fighting hard for survival and trying to figure out what they're going to do to make life work. And that's why the guy Peter Schaefer that we talked about earlier is trying to start kind of a movement, among agents to sustain the business, change some rules, and develop some industry standards. We had a meeting in February at the Combine that we hosted. We had about 600 agents there. They talked about these industry standards. That's on my Facebook page if you want to watch. It's kind of boring. I don't know if economic stability is in the cards. We have a work stoppage, as y'all probably know, coming up after this season. Is that right? Or is that, yeah, I think it's after this season. That will make a lot of determinations on what happens next. All right, that's agents, guys. What do you got? Anything? Go ahead.
Can you keep trying the exam if you fail the first time?
Good question that I didn't touch. You can take it twice. If you fail the first time, you can take it the next year. You can get a deferral if you want to, but most people are going to come back the next year. If you fail the second time, you got to wait 5 years. And you got to start all over with the money and everything. So you got to make sure you pass it those first 2 years. Now, there probably won't be an agent exam next summer because they'll be in the middle of the labor stuff. So for the guys that fail it this summer, they're in bad shape because they have to wait 2 years. So unlucky for them. Other questions? Go ahead.
Is the rate always 3%, or do certain agents charge more or less?
3% is the max.
Max?
The way that the NFLPA set it up a few years ago is they went in and said, okay, here, choose what you want to pay. And it started at 3, and at 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1, I think. And so you circle what you want. Now, that's negotiated with the agent himself. So it might vary, but most agents, if they're paying for your training, they're going to want 3%. If you're a first rounder, then you've got enough leverage to say, I'm not paying 3%, I'll pay 1% or whatever. But most players don't have that kind of leverage, so most are paying closer to 3. Go ahead, man.
Do you think the XFL could end up like failing just like the AAF?
And I could talk all day about that. Doug Whaley, who is essentially the XFL's top football guy, is a good friend of mine. He actually spoke at one of my seminars at the Combine. I'm hopeful that the XFL succeeds where the AAF didn't. The XFL is fundamentally different because they're really focused more on player development, whereas y'all may have seen in the news, as we've learned, the AAF was really more about an app they wanted to develop that was for gambling, and they had to have a game that was played on the field so they could develop that app. And so the whole deal was, we're going to develop this app and the players will work on. They spent too much money on the app and they didn't have enough money left over for the players, so they had to disband. I hope the XFL succeeds. The thing about the XFL, man, of the 4 majors, the NFL has the best minor league system, bar none, and they don't pay a penny for it. It's college football, okay? And you can't, I mean, there are players that can get better, they continue to play, but the NFL, they don't really care. They've got superstars coming out every year, a new crop, and those guys are going to be their big guys that are going to really market to people, and that's really all they need. They'll take the risk that the Kurt Warners and those kind of guys that came up and played indoor football or whatever fall through the cracks. They got plenty of stars. They got plenty of good players. So I hope the XFL succeeds. I want it to. I'm rooting for them. I have a lot of friends that are working in that league. I'm not real optimistic about it. It just never has succeeded.